Welcome to the DOGE Diaries, diving deep into government efficiency. All right, everyone, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling a big one. The role of government in making sure AI used in the public sector is, well, not evil. Think ethical, unbiased, and actually helps people.
Yeah, because the last thing we need is AI deciding who gets what benefits or who gets targeted by law enforcement based on some messed up algorithm, right? It's got to be fair for everyone.
Absolutely. And while it's tempting to think about grand solutions, we really need to focus on incremental improvements to the existing systems to make sure things stay balanced and fair. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and risk destabilizing an already complex system.
But isn't that kind of thinking what got us here in the first place? Slow incremental changes while the world is changing at warp speed. I'm not saying we throw everything out, but maybe we need some bold moves to actually keep up with the pace of technological advancement and government incentivizing that, not just regulating it.
Okay, so what does that look like practically speaking? Like, what kind of incentives are we talking about? Tax breaks for companies developing ethical AI? Grants for researchers? What's on the table?
Well, you could certainly look at things like government-backed venture capital funds specifically targeted at ethical AI startups, or even public-private partnerships where the government helps de-risk early-stage development. The goal would be to encourage innovation while setting ethical guardrails from the beginning.
Yes, and think about AI sandboxes where developers can test their algorithms on real-world data, but in a safe, controlled environment, right? So you can catch biases and unintended consequences before they impact real people's lives.
Okay, I like that. But who decides what's ethical and unbiased? That sounds like a recipe for political gridlock. What one person thinks is fair, another person might see as completely unfair, you know?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It needs to be a multi-stakeholder approach. We're talking ethicists, computer scientists, policymakers, and, most importantly, representatives from the communities who will be most affected by these AI systems. It can't just be a bunch of tech bros in Silicon Valley deciding what's good for everyone.
Exactly. And that's where the beauty of blockchain comes in, potentially. Could we create a transparent, auditable system where the decision-making process is open to the public, where everyone can see how these algorithms are being developed and deployed? That feels like a step in the right direction.
Okay, blockchain. Now you're talking my language a little bit more. But is that really feasible? Isn't blockchain still kind of complicated for the average person to understand? How do you get people to trust something they don't even get?
That's a valid concern. It's not just about the technology, it's about usability and accessibility. We need to make sure that these systems are designed in a way that's intuitive and easy for everyone to understand. Otherwise, you're just creating a new layer of exclusion.
Right. It's got to be user friendly. Think about something like universal basic income distributed via blockchain. That's a concrete example of how it could directly benefit people. Show them the value and the trust will follow.
UBI and blockchain. Now you're talking wild. That's getting pretty far out there. I'm all for helping people out, but UBI always seems to have some hidden costs, you know? And who's paying for all this fancy AI and blockchain stuff in the first place? Is it just going to be more taxes on the working class?
Those are crucial questions. The funding model is absolutely key. We need to explore different options, including things like progressive taxation, closing corporate loopholes, and even reevaluating our overall budget priorities. It's about making sure that the benefits of AI are shared by everyone, not just a select few.
And think about the long-term gains. Ethical AI could automate a lot of bureaucratic processes, freeing up resources for other critical areas like education and healthcare. It's an investment in our future, not just a cost.
Okay, I hear you, but what about jobs? If AI is automating everything, what are people going to do? Are we all just going to be sitting around collecting UBI and playing video games all day?
That's a legitimate fear, but it's also a bit of a dystopian fantasy. History has shown that technological advancements tend to create new jobs and industries, even as they displace others. The key is to invest in education and training programs that equip people with the skills they need to thrive in the AI-driven economy.
Yes, we need to embrace the idea of lifelong learning and maybe even redefine what work means. If AI can handle the mundane, repetitive tasks, that frees us up to pursue more creative, fulfilling endeavors. Think about artists, innovators, community organizers, people who are focused on building a better world.
All right. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. But let's get real for a second. We're talking about government here. And government, well, it doesn't exactly have the best track record when it comes to efficiency and innovation. How do we make sure this whole thing doesn't turn into a giant boondoggle?
Transparency and accountability are paramount. We need strong oversight mechanisms to ensure that these AI systems are being used responsibly and ethically. And that includes independent audits, whistleblower protections, and clear lines of responsibility when things go wrong.
And think about decentralized governance models. Could we use DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, to manage these AI systems where the rules are encoded in smart contracts and the community has a say in how things are run? That could be a powerful way to prevent corruption and ensure that the AI is serving the public interest.
DAOs. Now you're losing me again with the tech jargon. I'm just trying to imagine my grandma trying to vote on an AI algorithm using a DAO. It's not pretty.
Exactly. It can't be this exclusive, complex process. We need to find ways to make these governance models accessible to everyone, regardless of their technical expertise. Think about user-friendly interfaces, educational resources, and even community-based facilitators who can help people participate in the decision-making process.
Right. It's about empowerment, not exclusion. And it's not just about voting, it's about participation. Think about platforms where people can propose ideas, provide feedback, and even contribute to the development of these AI systems, a truly collaborative approach.
Okay, collaborative, I like the sound of that. But let's talk about some real-world examples. Are there any governments out there that are actually doing this stuff well? Or is this all just pie in the sky dreaming?
Well, there are some interesting case studies emerging. Estonia, for example, has been a leader in digital governance for years, and they're exploring ways to use AI to improve public services like healthcare and education. But they're also very mindful of the ethical implications and the need for data privacy.
And what about the work being done with AI in disaster relief? Using algorithms to predict where resources are needed most and to coordinate rescue efforts more efficiently. That's a powerful example of how AI can be used for the public good.
Okay, disaster relief, that's something everyone can get behind. But what about more controversial areas like law enforcement? I've heard some scary stories about AI being used to profile people and target communities unfairly.
That's where the bias mitigation piece becomes absolutely critical. We need to be incredibly careful about the data that's being used to train these AI systems. If the data reflects existing societal biases, the AI will simply amplify those biases. It's garbage in, garbage out.
And that's where adversarial training comes in, where you deliberately try to trick the AI into making biased decisions so you can identify and correct those weaknesses. It's like stress testing the system to make it more robust and fair.
So like you're trying to make the AI racist on purpose so you can then fix it. That sounds counterintuitive to say the least.
It is a bit counterintuitive, but it's actually a very effective technique. You're essentially using the AI to expose its own biases, so you can then develop strategies to mitigate them. It's like fighting fire with fire, in a way.
And it's not just about the data, it's about the algorithms themselves. Some algorithms are inherently more prone to bias than others. So we need to be exploring different approaches and developing new algorithms that are designed from the ground up to be fair and equitable.
Okay, so we're talking about a whole lot of work here and a whole lot of money. Is it really worth it? Is AI really going to make that much of a difference in people's lives?
I think the potential benefits are enormous. Imagine AI helping doctors diagnose diseases earlier and more accurately, or helping teachers personalize learning plans for each student, or helping urban planners design more sustainable and equitable cities. The possibilities are really endless.
And think about the potential for AI to empower marginalized communities, to give them access to information, resources, and opportunities that they've been historically denied. That's where the real transformative power of AI lies.
All right, I'm sold on the potential, but I'm still worried about the risks. What about the risk of government overreach? Of AI being used to monitor and control people's lives in ways that are Orwellian?
That's a very real concern. We need strong legal frameworks to protect people's privacy and civil liberties. And that includes things like data minimization principles, transparency requirements, and the right to challenge AI-driven decisions.
And think about the potential for using blockchain to create a decentralized, secure identity system where people own and control their own data and they can choose who to share it with. That would be a powerful way to protect privacy in the age of AI.
So it's like, I get to decide who gets to see my data and what they can do with it? That actually sounds pretty good. But how do you stop the government from just forcing me to hand over my data?
That's where the legal framework comes in. We need strong laws that limit the government's ability to access people's data, and that require them to obtain a warrant based on probable cause before doing so. It's about striking the right balance between national security and individual rights.
And it's about empowering individuals to fight back, to challenge government overreach in court, and to hold those in power accountable. We need a strong civil society to protect our freedoms in the age of AI.
Okay, so it sounds like we're talking about a pretty complex system here with a lot of moving parts and a lot of potential for things to go wrong. Is it really worth the effort? Shouldn't we just stick with what we know? with the systems we already have in place?
The systems we have in place are already failing many people. They're riddled with biases, inefficiencies, and inequalities. AI offers the potential to create a more just and equitable society, but only if we do it right. And that requires a proactive, thoughtful, and ethical approach.
Exactly. We can't be afraid of change. We need to embrace the potential of AI while also being mindful of the risks. It's a challenge, but it's one we have to face because the future is coming, whether we're ready for it or not.
All right, I'm convinced. But let's shift gears a little bit. I saw some news today about Trump rolling back some tariffs, but also raising them on China. It's all a bit confusing. How does that even affect this AI conversation?
Well, the tariffs create a lot of economic uncertainty, and that can definitely impact investment in research and development, including AI. If companies are worried about their bottom line, they're less likely to take risks on innovative new technologies.
And it impacts global collaboration. AI development is a global endeavor. If we're building walls and isolating ourselves from the rest of the world, we're going to miss out on valuable insights and expertise. Think about it. The whole point of DOGE and blockchain is a global network. Trump's actions directly counteract that idea.
Yeah, it feels like every time he does something, it's just a knee-jerk reaction to whatever's happening in the market. Like he's just trying to prop up the stock prices without thinking about the long-term consequences for ordinary people.
I think it's a bit more strategic than that. While disruptive to global trade, his actions can be viewed as an attempt to negotiate better deals. Pausing the tariffs suggests a recognition that further escalation risks damaging the U.S.'s dominant economic position. This underscores the importance of strategic bargaining in the face of global economic pressures.
But what good is a better deal if it comes at the cost of our values? If it means sacrificing human rights or undermining international cooperation? The end doesn't always justify the means.
That's what I'm saying. It's like he's so focused on winning, he doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. And that's not what leadership is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about serving the people, not just your own ego.
Well, the budget blueprint that just passed also plays into this and could drive where resources go. Although it was pretty contentious, the House had to really scramble to get the votes.
Right. So if the government is trying to slash spending across the board, where does that leave funding for ethical AI development? Are we going to prioritize short-term economic gains over long-term social good? I'm worried.
Me too. It always seems like the things that are actually important get cut first. Education, healthcare, environmental protection, all the stuff that actually makes people's lives better. It's always the first to go.
I understand the concerns, but the budget blueprint actually highlights a commitment to finding savings while preserving essential programs. And Johnson has even stated that Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid will not take a hit. So it might be less dire than it appears at first glance.
But are those just words, or will they actually follow through on those promises? And even if they protect those specific programs, what about everything else? What about the things that are just as important, but don't have the same political clout?
Yeah, it's always a shell game, isn't it? They promise one thing, but then they sneakily cut funding from somewhere else. You got to keep your eyes peeled. That's for sure.
That's why oversight is so important. We need independent watchdogs to scrutinize the budget and make sure that the government is actually doing what it says it's going to do. And we need to hold our elected officials accountable if they break their promises.
And we need to be thinking creatively about alternative funding models. Could we use things like tokenization to fund public goods, where the community directly invests in projects they believe in and they get a share of the rewards? That could be a powerful way to bypass traditional political channels and ensure that resources are allocated where they're needed most.
Tokenization? Okay, now you're just making up words again. I'm starting to feel like I need a PhD in crypto just to understand what you're talking about.
It's essentially about creating digital assets that represent ownership or access to something. Think of it like crowdfunding, but with a built-in incentive structure. It's a way to democratize investment and empower communities to fund the projects they care about.
Exactly. And if those tokens are tied to real-world assets or to the success of the project, that creates a powerful incentive for everyone to work together and make it succeed. It's a win-win situation.
All right, I'm starting to get it, but it still sounds a bit complicated and a bit risky. What if the project fails? What if the tokens become worthless?
That's a risk with any investment, of course. But the key is to do your research, understand the risks, and only invest what you can afford to lose, and to support projects that have a strong track record and a clear vision for the future.
And that's where transparency comes in again. If the project is open source and the decision-making process is transparent, that makes it easier for people to assess the risks and make informed decisions.
Okay, transparency, I'm all for that. But let's be honest, a lot of these crypto projects are just scams. How do you tell the difference between a legitimate project and a pump and dump scheme?
That's a great question, and it's something that everyone needs to be aware of. There are definitely a lot of scams out there, and it can be difficult to tell the difference between them and legitimate projects. The key is to do your due diligence, research the team behind the project, and look for red flags like unrealistic promises or a lack of transparency.
And that's where the community comes in. A strong, engaged community can be a powerful safeguard against scams. If people are actively involved in the project, they're more likely to spot problems and raise concerns.
So it's like trust but verify. That's a good rule of thumb for just about everything in life, I guess.
Exactly. And it's especially important when it comes to new and emerging technologies like AI and blockchain. We need to be optimistic about the potential, but also realistic about the risks. And we need to be constantly vigilant to protect ourselves from scams and abuses.
And that's why conversations like this are so important. We need to be having these discussions openly and honestly so we can educate ourselves and each other about the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to shape the future we want to see.
Well said. It's definitely a lot to think about. But I'm feeling a bit more optimistic now than I was at the beginning of this conversation. Maybe AI and blockchain really can make the world a better place if we do it right.
I agree, it's not going to be easy, but it's worth the effort. The potential rewards are just too great to ignore.
Absolutely. The possibilities are endless, and it all starts with a commitment to ethical development, transparency, and accountability. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And until next time, keep Doge in good.